Good afternoon and welcome to Stock Talk. My name is Sean Kabak and I will be your host. Manitoba Agriculture is offering a series of livestock and forage webinars for Manitoba's beef producers. These webinars will run monthly until April. We're glad you can join us for today's presentations, which will be recorded so you can view them at a future date or if you can't make the 12:30 start. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to submit them by typing them in on your computer or smartphone. A couple things I want to mention: the Beef Cattle Research Council website is a great resource for cattle producers covering a wide range of topics, everything from animal health, welfare, beef quality, drought management, environmental sustainability, feed efficiency, forage grassland, and more. They just put out 6 tips for managing cattle in cold weather, including providing weather protection, water access is key, monitor body condition, adding energy in the diet under extreme conditions, providing bedding, and monitoring weather and cattle response. And we'll hear more about ration balancing to meet the livestock requirements a bit later in today's webinar. Manitoba Ag's updated beef cattle cost production are now available, covering cow-calf to backgrounding, feedlot, hay, silage production, and more. And these are available online at your nearest MASC service center. So to tell us more about cattle cost production and to start off today's presentations, we have Ben Hamm, who is a farm management specialist out of our Steinbach office. I'd like to welcome Ben, and he can take it away.
Thank you, Sean. Just share my screen here. Just let me know when it's up and we'll get going.
Yeah, it looks good, Ben.
All right. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm a farm management specialist, livestock. I'm in the lead for all the forage and livestock cost of production budgets here in Manitoba. So it's been a busy season here. And boy, 2024, the tail end of it here has been really hard to keep up, to be honest with you. We did a bunch of updates in September, and I am way out on some of the values. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to go through the cost of production here for the cow-calf. I'm using our 300 cow-calf budget. It's a silage ration-based budget. And from that, I'll go over to the backgrounding side. But to start off the presentation, I want to talk a little bit about Manitoba beef cattle and the values we have. We are at 10.7% of the national herd, 373,600 here in Manitoba, and we're continually dropping. And it has been a challenge and will continue to be a challenge to increase those numbers. I mean, we are seeing some definite profitability now. It's the uncertainty and the unknown that is keeping us from expanding like we should be. And the numbers are telling us that we should be in expansion mode, and yet the numbers are not supporting us. This is a chart just to tell us that we aren't increasing the total number of cattle and calves yet. We're continuing to decrease, and it's the challenges that we all face to see that profitability isn't the factor. We do have that this year, and these charts are just telling us that we do have a struggle in the industry. And what does that mean for the beef cattle cycle and what impacts us going forward? It's hard to read and figure out exactly. We do see a little bit of beef heifers starting to be kept back at the end of 2024 estimations, but we'll see what that looks like start of next year when those numbers are all final. Livestock price insurance, I do like using this as a data source. The week of October 24th, 21st, we saw Saskman settle at 410. And boy, we thought that was pretty good. But December 9th, we're at 460. 50-cent jump, like that's significant. And it's in our favor this time. We were all pretty grumpy when the grain guys had $24 canola. Well, this is our time now. We have $460 pound, 600-pound calves, so that's pretty decent. This is just a quick look at what the cow-calf estimated returns have been over the years, and not that many years where we do have positive margins. So a real challenge, and we do need to take advantage of these times when we do have positive margins and protect ourselves. Risk management is key. Anybody on the call, I really stress livestock price insurance and agri stability. Take a look at those, see how we can lock in some of this profitability into the future. So we'll dive right in. This is our 2025 cost of production. It's on a 300 cow herd corn silage ration. From here, diving right in, we do have our feed cost sitting at $455 per cow. I'll go into the ration here quickly. It's ration number 3. We're feeding a corn silage and straw, and the total ration here is a $1.80 per head per day. What I do like about this sheet inside of our budgets, it gives us 8 different rations of different ways to feed a cow, whether it's hay and straw and pellets. It just gives you different idea of what the different rations look like on different years. As long as you can keep these ingredients up to date on what you have available, it identifies very quickly what you have available, and what the ration you have available to feed those cows and what that cost is on a per cow per day basis. So here it's showing us at $40 corn silage, we can feed that cow the cheapest at $1.80 per head per day. So it just tells you something very unique about your farm. If you can update these and what you can grow it at, it very quickly tells you where the economics are on the winter feed side. So when we talk winter feed, it's one of the biggest input costs we do have going into the budget. So how can we reduce that winter feed cost? Extended grazing, it's not a new concept, not a new term, but we always do talk about it. We do have corn grazing, stockpiled forage, swath grazing, all these different ways to have those cows fed. So here we can see corn grazing, for example, 15 tons an acre. It requires 28 acres to feed these cows for 30 days. So this cost is $1.14 per head per day. And now this is after being fed. That $1.80 that we had on the corn silage ration was before being fed, whereas this now is showing what the cost is after being fed. So on that $1.80, we still have yardage and equipment costs and the labor cost to get those cows fed. So we have the winter feed costs here, 455, 59, and then we have operating costs. Those are so variable through all different operations. I don't want to spend any time on it other than a producer has to put in his own variables to come up with that cost. So we highlight our budget for that very purpose. It's an Excel spreadsheet to make it easier to have these tailored to individual needs. And from there, you can get some pretty decent charting for your own operations if you go in and update your own costs. And then for fixed costs, we do have the fixed cost coming in at 252 for a total cost of production of $1,500 per cow. Some of the fixed costs going in, we're pretty light on fixed costs, to be honest with you. Our capital that we have for buildings and that are very light, but it's just showing you what I do have in it. And the value for buildings and facilities only 100,000. We've got a 237,500 for equipment. We've got a $175,000 tractor loader, the tractor and feed wagon to get those cows fed with a corn silage ration at 60,000. So we do have a little bit more there for infrastructure on the equipment. But it's just giving you an idea how that's allocated. Spend some time on the buildings and facilities to make it accurate to your situation, and you can get some pretty decent values and numbers coming out of here to show what your operation is doing. So the total fixed cost 252. We do have a labor portion in there, and it's never enough, but it's a small token to get that cow fed, and we do not have labor associated with putting up that feed. It's coming in at market value, so there's labor there already in that $40 a ton corn silage. But this labor is just checking the cows in the summer and feeding the cow in the winter there. So we have a total of 162 labor, and there is still some paid labor in this budget as well, but a total cost of production of 1,500. Some of these charts will be tailorable to you when you do it on your own. The grazing, it comes up with your grazing cost, whether you have rented, owned, marginal, improved pasture, it comes up with that grazing cost, and then that total overwintering cost, it'll pull in the yardage, and it'll actually come up with your own yardage costs and have this chart available for you if you update it and have your own values in there. So marginal returns, I had to update this a few times to get ready for this presentation. First, I upped it to 415. To be honest with you, right now in our budget that we printed, we're at $3.80 steers, and now we're at 460. So I updated this to 415 steers and 390 heifers, and that wasn't even accurate enough. But even here, we have significant profit coming out of this budget. We have $1,500 cost, but we have $2,200 in revenue. So decent revenue coming off, totaling net profit of $700 per cow. But we do also now have this on a per acre basis. So now we can tell what kind of a per acre return we're getting here. And we do have a bit of a selection inside of our budget to look at what acres you're using for pasture as well as feed. And from there, we can get a total acre amount. So now I can analyze this on a per acre and compare it to a cropping section. So it's pretty decent. We do have very significant profit, and that is a lot better than any grain crop right now for projections into 2025. Break even, we do need these prices to be there. 275 is our break even. That's not making any profit, but it's just paying you to get this done. We need those $275 calves and higher to make this a profitable enterprise. So I did this again, 450, and that's still not enough. We're at 459, but it's just telling you how quickly that profit is escalating. We added another $152 of profit on the return per acre. It's $178 per acre. The returns are still there because the cost didn't change that much, but the returns are significant. Hopefully, everyone has got a tax plan in place because there's going to be a significant change in profitability, and hopefully everyone has thought that through and how they're going to deal with that influx of cash on some of these calves. Some of the charts we do have in, I threw one in here, and I get this question all the time on these years. What can you profitably pay for cows when we're looking at this? A lot of the values out there are getting crazy high. In 2014, we saw $3,000, $4,000 cows being sold. Well, now we're seeing $5,000 cows being sold. So what point do we buy those cows back in as replacements? Or if we're starting a herd, what point can we start identifying what we should be paying for those cows? So this chart identifies what value you should be paying for those cows at different levels of being financed. So if you're 100% financed, this is the line here, and you want a target profit of 150, you can pay up to 33.54 per cow. If you're wanting a higher profitability amount on financing those cows 100%, well, you're going to have to bring that value down to $2,500, $2,600 cows. So it kind of gives you a ballpark as to what you should be spending on those cows. If you have 0% financing, you can spend the most amount of cows. 25% financing at $150 target profit, you can spend up to $5,300 per cow. And if you have zero profit coming out and you're only looking at expansion, we can pay up to $6,000 a cow. Again, it's a little bit counterintuitive there. You're spending so much on a cow that's taking amount away on the amount that you're going to have in profit in the future years. But that is what this chart is telling you, that if you're taking all the profit from this year and throwing it at cows, this is the amount you can spend on it. It's a pretty neat chart, and it'll tailor it to your own very situation if you update this and put your own variables in. So I'll quickly talk a little bit about backgrounding next. That's been a question I'm getting a lot. Why would I be backgrounding these calves if I'm getting 460, 470, $5 calves? Well, we really need to be looking at risk management, protecting the investment that you're having in those calves to get those calves fed and hopefully market at a later date, and hoping that there's nothing going on in the markets, and the markets will be holding come March, April, May, June, or whenever you plan on marketing those calves. So here, inside of our budgets, based on a 500 feeder operation, we're going to raise those calves from 500 to 900 pounds. We've got 3 different rations in there. We've got different rates of gain. Here, for example, I'm using a corn silage ration again at 2.5 pound average daily gain. So it is balanced ration, and the total feed costs to get those calves fed from 500 to 900 pounds is $264 per calf. This is an example of what you're feeding at the different weight ranges for those calves. So 500 to 600 pounds, you're on feed for 40 days, and these are the amounts you're feeding and what you're feeding. Again, if you are doing this, make sure you get that feed tested because you're putting a lot on the line by keeping those calves back and not marketing them now. So make sure you get your feed tested to get the desired gains that you do need. So this gives an example of how much they're required at the different weight ranges. This just talks about the operating costs coming in. The feeder cost going in is the biggest cost, but if you're feeding your own, that cost isn't there realized. It's just what you could have got for those calves if you did market them. And then again, these operating costs are so unique to everyone. I won't spend any time on it. You have to put your own values in to make this thing tell you what you're doing and what your costs are. So here, the total operating cost, $24.61. Fixed costs, again, I'm not that heavy on fixed costs. So take a look at the budget and what I do have in there and tailor it to your operation in the buildings and the machinery and equipment. So it's not brand new equipment that I'm running here in the budget, but do take a look and see. I do have a little bit of labor thrown in it, but not a significant amount. but it is 13,500 total to feed those 500. So very, very little. So keep that in mind when you're doing the budget. But the total cost for those backgrounders is 2522. Yardage calculation, I get that question a lot. So I took our budget and I threw the costs associated with yardage into this little spreadsheet, and it came out with a yardage cost of 85 cents. Again, that's going to be different for everyone. So throw that in there. If you're using the same facilities as your cow-calf, and you could probably get a little lighter on the infrastructure cost because you're spreading it out twice. But anyway, it gives you an idea of what yardage cost is on a per head per day basis. So 85 cents is what we're looking at here. Gives you a quick idea. So this is some of the economics from raising calf to 900 pounds. We're going to mark it at 873 pounds. That's shrunk weight that's in the ring. So we got to feed it up to 900 pounds to get that 873 shrunk, and we're buying in at $4 a pound. So that's telling you that you need a break even of 295 if you're buying $4 calves. And Price Insurance is offering that and well above that. So I would really be looking at locking in that risk and looking at Price Insurance to protect you on that. Break even purchase price, if you're marketing at $3, now that's an old number, but you can spend up to 408 for those calves. So this thing tells you the different break even purchase price and selling points. So it's a unique tool in doing that. So I think the next slide, I have some different variables in there to show what some of the current prices are doing, but the cost per pound of gain sold, $1.54. And this is some of the marginal returns. If you're selling at $3, we're still making some decent money. Now we throw in a value at 450 and selling at 340. We can spend up to 475 per calf, per pound. Again, that's just to break even. So we want to do that. We want to make some profit, make more money than just the labor that I've got in there. So something to take note of there. Break even selling price at 450. If we're buying those things at 450, we need at least 325 out the back end. So again, that variable is an amount that can be purchased through LPI. So that is something to look at. Does some of that break-even stuff for you, and if you put your own values in there, it'll identify some of those variables for you. This is some of the charting that we have inside of our budgets, is just to identify where LPI policy needs to kick in to have some of the costs not covered. And right now, we're well above these variables here. A lot of these budgets in the past had a bunch of costs not covered. Well, we're in a position where there's profitability in the cow-calf sector as well as the backgrounding sector. So this is just telling us we need at least 285, 290 on these calves to be profitable, and we're there. LPI feeder settlement. Again, I really liked the market analysis these guys put together. Current SASMAN as of December 9th was 362. So decent prices that we're getting now. Hopefully that'll hold into February, March, April, May if you're holding your calves back. But LPI policy is there. I took the policy out December 10th here to show you can get 342. And the premiums have come way down. If you guys aren't watching, 387 per hundredweight. So if we're putting on 873 pounds a calf, it's only costing us $33 now to buy a policy at 342. I would really encourage everyone to look at this and see, even if it's not at the top coverage, even if it's at 330, it's only costing us $2 a hundredweight, $17 to get significant amount of coverage, $1.4 million. That's how much money is on the line now with these 500 calves that we put on the feeding program. So it does the analysis. It looks at LPI. It breaks it down on what the premium cost is, what the insured value per head is, what the percent premium of insured value is. So very good value in buying a coverage right now with some of these premium costs. Some of the corn, soybeans, canola, we're looking at 3-4% premium. We're quite low here on the LPI side. So it's telling us that the risk is lower, but it is giving us value for that. So that's something to look at. Just wanted to highlight some of the tools that we do have available out there. If you guys aren't familiar, we have the 300 cow-calf cost of production, 150 cow-calf cost of production based on a hay ration. We have the backgrounding budget. I've got a beef replacement heifer cost budget, grassing costs. So a lot of these feed tools available to help identify what that feed cost is. Feed plan is one of my favorite little tools to help identify what the cheapest source of protein and energy is. And our next presenter will talk a little bit about the value of protein in lick tubs. I do like talking about that. Well, FeedPlan will analyze that very, very quickly and tell you what the story is there. So some of these tools here are available for you guys all to use and change and make some sound financial management decisions on your farm. So these tools are available for you online. Take a look at them. Let me know if you have any questions on them. We've updated majority of the livestock ones just a couple weeks ago. The numbers are outdated, so update them with your current values. A lot of these tools now are available online. You can use them on iPads, iPhones, and you can quickly change the values at any point on your different devices. So that's it for me. I don't know if we have time for questions or not, but that's my contact info. There's my cell number, my email address, and that's a link to all of our cost of production tools there. So um, that's it for me. Sean?
All right. Thanks, Ben, for that great presentation. It's always fun to be in farm management when prices are strong like they are and there's a high level of profitability. It's always important for producers to sharpen that pencil, go through their costs, go through their returns to ensure or try to ensure that there is profitability at the different pricing levels and costs. You didn't touch on calf crop shares or cow leasing at all. Do you want to comment? Have you done any crop shares analysis this year at all?
No, no, I've got the tool there available for you and take a look at it. These profitable years is the time to look at those. I always find it kind of not funny, but the time we see a lot of that is when we have losses. We have the people asking how are we going to do a crop share when there's a loss. But now there is some profitability. So we look at an 80-20 profit share on a cow calf agreement. You know, there's $700, $800 profit. 20% of that now is $400 a calf if you're looking at doing the 80-20 rule there. So that tool is available to help identify what some of those arrangements can and should be based on expenses and you know, some of the revenue that's going in and how to do that. So you're right, Sean. Thanks for asking that. We do have that tool available. Take a look if you want to have some more details on it.
And there's also the custom lease agreements, and that are on our website too, that producers can have a look at and customize.
Yeah, it's a starting point. Yeah, sorry, Sean. Yeah, it is a starting point. You know, if you are looking at putting an agreement together, make sure you take it to a lawyer with the dollar amounts available, and that's at risk right now. It's really important to have legal advice on it. These aren't legal documents approved by lawyers here. They're just sample agreements that we can start thinking about what information we need to bring to lawyers. So if you are doing legal agreements, make sure you have a lawyer involved.
Okay, thanks. Just like to remind producers, you can type questions into the Q&A section on your screen. So you just have to look for that and type in your questions at any time, and then we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. So once again, thanks, Ben. There's a lot of details in the cost of production booklets, and encourage producers to look at that and go through it. And the farm management team does a super job of putting the numbers together and having that information available to our producers. So thank you to Ben and the farm management team.
Thanks, Sean.
So our next presentation on beef cattle nutrition, we have Barry Yaremcio from Camrose, Alberta, where he does consulting work with livestock producers. And he's going to go through some of the different rations that producers can consider, and body condition scoring, and just overall management for profitability in the cattle herd. So I'd like to welcome Barry, and I'll ask him that he can share his screen.
All right, is my screen up there, Sean?
Not yet.
Not yet.
There it's good now.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you very much for asking me to chat with you folks today. To do a good job of nutrition and getting into some of the rations, it takes a lot of time. So Ben gave a lot of good example rations in his presentation of what's possible. The only way to really know what needs to be done is by doing a proper job of analyzing the feed and then working with the numbers when you get the results. So with any biological system, there's a hierarchy of use of the nutrients. This is a great slide on energy availability. The first thing that happens is a portion of the total energy available is used for the vital functions: breathing, heartbeat, moving of nutrients around, mobility of the animal, metabolic functions. And that's the first thing that has to be done, is take care of those maintenance requirements. If there is excess energy available, the next place that energy is used is to maintain lactation. Again, a very high energy requirement, especially in that first 12 weeks of lactation. If there's excess energy available, then you've got the ability for those animals to reproduce and be successful during the breeding season. If there's more energy left after that, then you get fat deposition in the animal. So it's something that has to be considered when you look at these rations, and we can always see that if there's something not quite right, changes in that animal's ability to gain weight is definitely the first sign, and then reproduction goes. When we look at the different types of feed that we have, one problem that still exists is with people not covering their silage piles or their pits. When you look at the pile or the pit, when you open it up or once you start feeding, 1 inch of spoilage was equivalent to 4 inches of material that was packed when it was put into the pit. With the oxygen being available, you get lactic acid fermentation formed during fermentation. Less or lactic acid formation is reduced, more acetic and butyric acid. Those two are less energy efficient when used in the metabolic cycle, but also changes the feed quality and the acceptance of the animal to eat that silage material. You're going to potentially have problems with molds and yeast and bacteria. With the oxygen being available, the aerobic bacteria produce a lot of heat. Your original silage that may have had 10, 12, 13% protein, you could potentially have 20, 25% of that protein tied up by the heat fermentation, the Maillard reaction, and making it less available to the animal. So that 12% protein on the original feed test result, if you take off the amount that's bound to the fiber and unavailable to the animal, you could be in that 9% range. The other thing is with open pits or open piles with no seal with plastic, your shrink factors can be 8% or higher. When you're doing your feed sampling and testing, using a core sampling tool is critical. When you look at it, if you've got snow on the ground and you try taking some samples by hand and you're pulling the material out of the bale, you'll see a bunch of leaf material landing on the snow. That's the gravy. That's the high quality portion of the forage. So using the comparison between the grab and the core sample, you can see that if you were looking at a lactating cow ration, 11% as the minimum, you'd need a little bit of protein supplementation with a grab sample, probably 4-5 pounds of barley per head per day to meet the energy requirements. Calcium, phosphorus look pretty good. But with the core sampling tool, you can get the true value of those nutrients and also big differences in phosphorus content in that material. When you're getting the analysis done at the lab, protein, acid detergent fiber, or ADF, and neutral detergent fiber, NDF, Those can be done either by wet chemistry, which is the traditional method of getting analysis done, or by near-infrared spectrometry. So as long as there's a carbon molecule associated with the analysis, there seems to be no problem. But when it comes to the trace minerals and macro minerals, you need to have it done by wet chemistry. If you compare the difference between the NIR and wet chemistry for the calcium, you can see that the overestimation of calcium and other nutrients, when you get 300% variation in the result, there's no point using those numbers. So always get everything done for minerals and trace minerals by wet chemistry. One thing that I'm finding this year is with the variability in feeds and grazing conditions that we had in Alberta this year, we've got some animals that are in good condition, such as this one, where you can see a nice straight back line on it. There's a good fat cover over the entire animal. That animal can be fed roughly 35% straw or some lower quality forage in the ration to maintain body condition. A cow that's in good shape has more fat and is able to withstand the colder temperatures. You're going to have less calving difficulties because the muscle development is there, and muscle tone should be good as well. The cow in moderate condition, and you can see just above the shadow of that cow's head, over the short rib area, there's more of an indentation and a hollow point. That's indicating that that animal is losing condition or is not in good enough condition to make it through the winter without some extra help. And that being probably 2, 3, 4 pounds of grain a day to bring that animal back up to good body condition prior to calving. The one that gets a little bit scary is the one that is in thin condition. Very little fat cover. You can see the short ribs, the backbone is more apparent, a tail head, pin bones are showing. That animal is probably 200 to 250 pounds lighter than what it should be. With an animal in this shape, I think the lack of fat will require that cow eat an additional 1,400 pounds of hay for the winter just to stay warm, not to put on weight, just to stay warm. Also, animals that are pregnant and in this condition, fetal imprinting has an impact on how that calf will function at birth and all the way through to slaughter. It'll reduce growth rates, can be up to 150 pounds reduction in calf growth rate by weaning, more health problems, pneumonias, scours, navel ills, some of the more common calf diseases. Feed efficiency is also reduced because that animal does not have the size of the organs to develop efficiency compared to one that was born to an animal that was in good condition. Quality of colostrum and quantity of colostrum is also impaired when you have a cow that's thin. Thin cows also create a lot of problems with getting them to cycle and to conceive. Thin cows that are put out to the bull at 90 days post calving, you can see only 66% of those animals are actually cycling at that point in time. If things are going right and your nutrition program is working, you should see those cows cycling at 60 days or have one heat cycle prior to the turnout in the bull. And you can see that the cows in the moderate and good condition are more capable of conceiving that calf right off the start in the first cycle. I know that the new beef management survey are saying that 70% of the cows should be cycling or should be conceiving in the first 21 days or first cycle. I like to see that number higher. If you can get it up to 80%, it makes a big difference, because at $4 a pound, 20 days of growth rates at 2 pounds a day gain, that's 80 pounds at $4. That's an extra $320 a calf when you send it to the market. Not only body condition at the start of the reproductive or at calving time is important, but also to prevent those cows from losing weight after calving and before the bulls are turned in. I know these are old numbers, but they still are valid. You can see that if those animals have a slight increase in body weight between calving and bull turnout, the conception rate is improved by any place from 20 to 25, 30%. So if you can feed those animals so that they are gaining, even if it's 2/10 of a pound or 3/10 of a pound a day, that is enough to maintain those cows in good shape and make them more receptive to the bull at breeding time. Mentioned colostrum quality a little bit earlier. The big thing there is you've got two types of immunoglobulins that are formed. The one, IgM, is the short-term immunoglobulins that are used in that first 4 to 6 weeks after birth. This is American numbers. So the 6 as body condition score in this slide is equivalent to a body condition score of 3 underneath the Canadian system, the condition you want those cows to be. You can see that a cow that's 150 pounds light will only provide half the amount of short-term immunoglobulins to help fight diseases off. The IgG, or long-term immunoglobulins, it's only about a 25% problem, but that's for preventing problems at that 4 or 5 months of age. BVD, BRSV, those are the two that come to my mind right off to the start. The other thing is cows after calving do not have a good amount of feed intake because they have to involute the reproductive system and allow the rumen and the other digestive systems to expand in size to be able to eat more. The red vertical line is at 12 weeks. That's where you have your maximum feed intake. The peak lactation occurs 8 weeks after calving. So you can see that you don't get your maximum feed intake until that reduction in milk production is already starting to occur. So the trick is to optimize your milk production at 8 weeks after calving. So if we have an ability for an animal to mobilize fat off their back to increase the amount of energy to produce milk, 1 pound of fat will produce 7 pounds of milk. And for a young calf, 7 pounds of milk is equivalent to 1 pound of gain. Quick rules of thumb that I use, they're a little higher than what you have in the Cow Bites program. Cow Bites was designed using the National Research Council nutrient requirements for beef cattle as a base. That's great when you've got warm temperatures and cattle under barns and in perfect environmental conditions, but for real world, these are the numbers that I like to see. 7, 9, and 11 for protein, mid, late, and after calving, and then that 55, 60, and 65% TDN as guidelines as well. For calves, a little bit different. A 1,000-pound calf needs 10% protein for every 100 pounds of reduction in size. You increase the protein by roughly 1%, so that your 500-pound calf needs roughly a 14 to 15% protein content. Energy-wise, those young calves need that higher energy level just to maintain their growth rates so they don't stall out. After that, it's a question mark, depending if it's a heifer at 1.8 pounds a day gain, or if you're pushing backgrounding steers at 2.5 pounds a day or higher. Feed waste, work that was done back in 2008, 2009, found that using a bale processor, delivering feed on snow, 19% loss. But the big thing is, it's not the total physical waste, it's the loss of, and 75% of the waste was material that was less than 3/4 of an inch in diameter. And that's the high quality portion, the leaves, the flowers. So you're losing more than 19% of the protein. Calcium, same thing. If you use a bale unroller, your process is down, loss is down to 12.3%, but you're still losing the leaves and the high quality portion of the feed. Using a bale processor feeding into bunks, as long as the material went into the bunks, and depending on the operator, you could have any place from 1 to 4% outside the bunk. Virtually everything is being consumed, and you're going to save yourself a considerable amount of time and money if you don't have to deliver more feed or make more bales of hay to put into the feed system. Come on here. Putting molasses onto straw. Price in Alberta here is roughly 35 cents a pound for the molasses product, the 20%, 30% protein molasses product. 1,000-pound cow can eat roughly 12 to 14 pounds of straw, 1.2 to 1.4% of body weight. So you'll be able to feed 71 cows on a 1,000-pound bale as part of the ration. So they will be getting any place from 1 to 1.4 pounds of molasses a day. Your total dry matter intake is limited by neutral detergent fiber content, the hardest part of a forage that needs to be digested. It can take 24, 36 hours longer than, say, a starch or acid detergent fiber component. And also, if your protein content in the ration is low, bacteria numbers in the rumen are not sufficient to do any good job of digesting the fiber. Therefore, it takes longer for that feed to pass through the digestive system. So paying attention just to the protein and energy differential between the two, you can see that adding 1.4 pounds of supplement will increase your energy content by 1.8 megacals of TDN, but that's only equivalent to about 0.2 of a pound of barley. To make up the difference in protein, this is where these products do shine. I won't take that away, but feeding 1.2 pounds of canola meal will do the same thing. So if you've got a 30% molasses product that's costing you 35 cents a pound, it's going to run you 49 cents a day. Barley at 7.40 a bushel, that's probably a little bit high right now. And canola meal at 3.55, which is fairly close. You can do the same job for only 22 cents. 27 cents a day difference on feed costs. And the other thing is, a lot of these molasses type products are very low in calcium and phosphorus. They just cannot be kept in suspension. So you're still going to need to provide a type of mineral product, which will run you probably another 18 to 20 cents a day. The other product that is being touted through the veterinary service, and I give them credit for being willing to do so, but what are you actually getting for this liquid injection supplement? This is a product that is injected either 2 or 4 times a year. The concentration of the trace minerals for copper, manganese, zinc, and selenium are listed. So if you give 2 injections per year for that 500-pound calf, they will be receiving 10 milligrams in total, or 150 milligrams of copper. Same thing goes for the other nutrients that are supplied. And what's unfortunate is the advertising for this product indicates that you can go ahead and use this as your total mineral supplementation program for the year. And unfortunately, that is not the case. So if you look at that 500-pound calf, using that 150 milligrams of copper supplied for the year, they're only getting 0.41 milligrams per day if it was delivered evenly throughout the year, which it won't be. It'll be front loaded, it'll be used up very quickly, whereas the requirement is 55 milligrams per day. So even if you get 50% of your copper, manganese, and zinc supplied by the forages and grain, only 10 to 15% of the selenium supplied by the feed itself, you can see that these animals are going to be running out of nutrients very, very quickly, and you will see such things as copper deficiency with the loss of pigmentation in the red or the black hair on those types of animals. So it's something that may help somebody if they're having troubles. I know that some purebred breeders are using this product to as a kickstart during the breeding season to increase their number of calves conceived in the first 21 days of the breeding season, but that's a special case. They're still supplying a regular ration, but using that as something to kickstart the whole system. Free choice mineral intake. This was done in northern Alberta. They found that days between visits for cows, yearlings, and calves can be any place from 2.6 to 4.8 days between visits. And consumption ranged from 1 gram to a high of 1,140 grams per day. So those young calves, say a 600 weight calf, was eating roughly 2.5 pounds of mineral a day. It's not very good for the animal because it'll upset all their balances of minerals and trace minerals and salt value and salt consumption. Wouldn't be a bit surprised if that animal did take in that 2.5 pounds of salt if it didn't run into a very loose manure situation within a day or two. The other things that we can't have cows telling us verbally what's going on, but there's ways for us to evaluate how the rumen is doing and how healthy that animal is for digesting feed. The picture on the smaller picture on the left is from a dairy barn, but that's an indication of acidosis. The manure just runs through them and has no structure to it. What we want to see is the picture on the right where the manure pat is fairly flat and uniform. That tells me that there's adequate amounts of protein in the ration. The bacteria are doing a good job of digesting the fiber, and that feed is being used properly. When we get into some of these lower quality rations and grazing corn or corn stover or some over mature forages, late season grasses, what happens is protein levels start to drop considerably after, say, an annual crop hits the heading stage. You'll see the protein levels go down, same with the forages. So what you get is incomplete digestion of the fiber, and you get manure that looks like this. I call this the onion ring syndrome. So if you're starting to see material coming out of the cow like this, you're going to need to supply additional protein so that they can eat the required amount of feed and get the digestion system working as well as it possibly can. If we get further decrease in protein intake, you'll get something that I call it's more serious than the onion rings. It's where the manure actually starts to pile up like a pyramid. And this is just before the point where the cows have troubles with impaction. These cows need extra protein and extra soluble carbohydrates, say grain supplementation, to get their feed intakes back up. It'll probably take 3, 4, 5 days for the manure to return back to normal if the ration is proper. But the big thing is something has to be done because these animals are probably being restricted in feed intake any place from 3 to 5 pounds a day just because the passage rate is slow and also not getting the full amount of energy and nutrients out of that forage that was consumed. If you're feeding grain to the animals and you need to supplement the protein and you don't have access to canola meal, distillers grains, or other protein sources, you can use urea to provide up to 20% of the total protein in the ration. With any system, and Ben made the point, is you have to use the feeds in an economic manner. So you're not overfeeding or underfeeding. The Cowbites ration balancing software is something that is a very good tool, both for feed inventory considerations, but it'll also give you cost of production for homegrown and purchased feeds. You can add a yardage cost in there if you're backgrounding calves to see what your break-even price is. And it's something, if once you get onto it and start using it, it's a good item. It's available for sale from the Beef Cattle Research Council, BCRC. The website is listed below. And the nice thing is your extension people from Manitoba, if you run into troubles and you need some help to figure something out, they're conversant with this program. And I'm sure that part of their job is to help producers balance rations either over the phone or directly, if I'm not mistaken. So if that's an option, definitely for $60, it'll pay for itself in no time. All right, I am going to finish there, Sean, and I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Barry. And yes, regarding the ration balancing, we do have livestock specialists across the province that can help producers either have a look at their Cowbites rations that they did themselves, or if they have some feed tests and would like us to work on some ration balancing with them, we could do that too. So thanks for that. We do have a few questions. We'll start with the first one. I understand beet pulp is used to make show steers look full. Would you recommend adding beet pulp to oats in a self feeder to limit intake if calves are getting too fleshy? Or is salt a better limiter for intake?
When calves start to get fleshy, oats provides a great source of energy, very digestible, minimal amounts of risk for bloats or acidosis. But the problem is oats only has about 11 to 12% protein. So you need to add some supplemental protein to that ration or to that creep feed. 20% soybean, 80% or raw soybeans work just fine if you can get some culls or screenings. 80% oats, that'll bring you up to a 16% creep ration. You'll find that those animals will stretch and frame out properly and get rid of that problem with them getting too fleshy. If beet pulp is used, it's a It's a good limiter, high fiber content. The dairies use it for a source of fiber so those cows will ruminate more and chew more to produce more saliva and buffering capability. But in a creep ration, I really, depending on how much grain they're actually consuming, it may have a place in there, but it is going to reduce the amount that they will consume overall.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I've noticed too, when the calves are still in the cow and on creep oats, I don't think they're they're getting more of a balanced ration with the milk and the oats, and they're probably still grazing or they're consuming hay or green feed. It's when they go on self feed after they're weaned, they can consume a high portion of their ration just oats if they have free choice oats. So I think that's partly where that question came from. Another question, when using cow bites to balance trace minerals, how do you account for using chelated minerals to meet the requirements? Many times the recommendations from the tag show a deficiency.
There was a paper published in December in the American Journal of Dairy Science evaluating the differences in chelated efficiencies based on different herds and different environments. And what they found out was there is variability between farms depending on prior nutritional condition or nutritional programs, condition of the animals, weather. And they found that improvements can be any place from 10 to 40%. If there is a claim of, and I know there's some out there that's saying they're getting 40% improvement in efficiency and absorption, that is true for that experiment with those animals in that condition. So there's no standard value. That's a moving target. So if you're using cow bites, the trace mineral levels that are being recommended are out of the NRC. Dr. Waldner from U of Saskatchewan has said that one of the biggest things that they are finding as a deficiency when they're looking at open cows or pregnancy rates is the deficiency in copper. So one thing that a veterinarian told me is you need a minimum of 250 milligrams of supplemental copper for a pregnant and lactating cow. The amounts that are in the cow bites program are low with these things that we've learned over time. So it's not uncommon to look at 16, 17, 20, 22 parts per million copper. That's in Alberta. But if you're running into high moly conditions, if you're above 2 ppm moly, for every milligram of moly in the ration, it ties up 7 parts per million copper. So if you've got 4% or 4 milligrams per kg of copper of moly in that ration, you need to add an additional 14 milligrams of copper over and above what's recommended. So you could be in that 30, 35, 40 milligrams per kg of copper to make up that shortfall. The other thing is if sulfur levels are high as well, that also ties up copper. The big thing there is a poor man's way of diagnosing it is if you line up a cow between you and the sun, look along the flank, especially if it's a red or a black animal, and you can see that the ends of the guard hair or the long hair pigmentation has dropped off. So you either got yellow or orange color. That's an indication you've got a copper deficiency. And if you see that, you're probably deficient in the other trace minerals as well.
Yeah, a lot of the soils in Manitoba are low in copper and zinc and higher in molybdenum. So I think it's pretty much a given. We need adequate copper supplementation in Manitoba, and it's just how do we get enough into them and to ensure that intake is adequate. And um, it's hard to find what is the chelated percents in a lot of our minerals. And is that the same in Alberta, or is it more readily available? Or maybe what's your strategy for ensuring there's adequate mineral intake? And on pasture, it's harder in comparison to winter feed, and you have a TMR where you can put in the couple ounces of mineral that they require.
Yeah. No, 100 grams is the standard rate for consumption on most of the minerals right now, or roughly 4 ounces, free choice or in a TMR based on how they're developed. Um, that paper from the Dairy Science, they indicated that the optimum level of chelation in a product is 35%. Now, there's companies out there that are offering 100% chelated mineral, your choice, but you got to remember that uh, chelated products are not cheap. So, see what works for you, work with your nutritionist, work with the extension people to figure this stuff out. And yeah, it's a moving ball all the time. It's a moving target. So uh, years with good moisture content are going to have a lot more growth, and therefore the dilution or the concentration of the trace minerals are going to be lower just because of a volume. The soil will only release so much a nutrient per year, no matter what it is. So if you get double the amount of yield compared to a previous year, expect the trace mineral levels can be down up to 50% compared to the normal year or the previous year.
Yeah, as livestock people, we have to continue to stress, I guess, the importance of adequate mineral supplementation and ensuring that they do get those levels into them, whichever way that producers can. And because
The
we know
one thing, the
efficiencies
one
out.
thing that I found is the cost of doing feed analysis can vary dramatically. I've looked over different labs, and the high amount, if you're getting the full mineral, macro mineral, proteins, fibers, and trace minerals done, the range in cost is between $28 and $140 per sample. So look around, do your shopping, find out uh, what the cost is and what's being offered, and go accordingly to what you need to do.
Another question regarding ionophores. What's your thoughts? Should we be including them in all of our rations, the backgrounder, cow rations? What's your experience?
Backgrounding rations, yes, no question. It'll provide you 7 to 8% improvement in feed efficiency and average daily gain. Right now, with the price of calves the way they are, for every dollar invested in the ionophore, you're probably looking at about a $7 return. If you're looking at a cow ration, um, if you're using a lot of straw and low quality forages, definitely. If you're having troubles with um, if you're having troubles with coccidiosis, both Bobatec and Rumensin are coccidiosis prevention products. If you do have the coccidiosis present and the outbreak is present, talk to your veterinarian. There's products such as decox that should be used instead.
Yeah, thanks for that great discussion, and thanks for joining us today, Barry. We really appreciate it and hearing from your experience and in the nutrition business. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So just a couple of things I want to mention before we wrap up today. Resilient Ag Landscape Program is still open. There's two BMPs available, one for agroforestry and the other for grasslands and grazing management. So if you wanted to do some rotational grazing, including cross fencing and offsite watering, There's funds available up to 75% cost share, up to 15,000. The catch is the deadline is tonight to apply. So if you want to apply, you have to get your application in by midnight tonight. So you can go to Manitoba Agriculture's website for the applications for that. And we have Beef and Forage Days coming up January 7th to 9th in Eriksdale, Austin, and Roblin. On January 7th, we're in Eriksdale in the afternoon. January 8th, we're in Austin all day. And January 9th, we're in Roblin for a good part of the day. Topics will cover forages, cattle marketing, beef nutrition, Ask the Vet, and more. Our next Stock Talk will take place on January the 16th, looking at Manitoba Crown Land Update, forages to improve soil health, and Western Canadian cow-calf survey. And then we have a few more upcoming dates in February, March, and April. We have livestock specialists across the province that can help you with your ration balancing, forage-related questions, forage fertility, and more. We have Pam in Dauphin, Cindy in Arborg, Elizabeth in Roblin, myself in Portage, and Kristen in Beausejour. There's the 10 MASC offices. You can stop in for your lending or insurance needs. And Manitoba Agriculture's website also has a lot of resources from livestock to forage to farm management and information on the EFP program, Environmental Farm Plan, and the RELP program. So that concludes today's Stock Talk. I'd like to thank you for joining us and hope you can join us on January the 16th.